If you ever felt like you're still chasing validation or replaying old childhood wounds, this one is for you. Recently, in I guess, how do I call it? I'm going to call it like an impromptu discovery. I realized that every single situation, relationship, whatever you want to call it, whether it was a friendship, familiar relationship, romantic relationship, whatever you want to call it, I realized all of them stemmed from my relationship or lack thereof, I guess you would say, with my mom, or the lack of a healthy relationship with my mother. Some of you all know my story. You guys know that I was raised by my father. My parents went through this really, really disgusting custody battle, and my father got full custody of me. And from as far back as I can look and see, I never felt like I was on like my mother's like list of priorities when it came to just spending time. Like, we were taken care of financially, but time was just something that even to this day, she just never seemed to have when it came to her daughters. And when my father got custody of me, I really didn't see her like that. Like, I just was recently speaking to a friend about this, and I was telling her that I can remember, like, I would come and stay at my auntie's house for like whole summers. And the only time that I would see my mom is like when she would pick me up. So let's say if I flew back home on a Sunday, she would pick me up on Saturday, take me shopping, and then Sunday take me to the airport for me to go home. And that was really the only time that I had with her. She's never had like any problem spending money on me, but time was always the thing that I was lacking when it came to her. And so I realize now as an adult that it put me in a place where I felt like I needed to perform, or I needed to have certain achievements to feel like I was good enough for her time. Whereas now as an adult, I do realize that has nothing to do with me and everything to do with her. But we really don't understand how our formative years really do affect our life choices, period. And so I did make a video entitled I'm a Reformed Pick-Me. And I spoke on the fact that I literally wanted to just be loved and chosen. And I was doing and becoming things to be that, right? And so I learned recently about myself that this stemmed from me longing for her in a certain relationship with her, or a certain type of attention from her. And so there was a situation that arose not too long ago where I was talking to her about a decision that I was going to make. And I was just telling her, they're like, hey, so with the economy, I think I'm going to downgrade my truck. And she didn't really ask any questions. She just kind of told me that she knows me, and that didn't make any sense. And she has this air about her where, like, if you don't agree with her, or she feels like you go against the grain, she gets aggressive and she gets dismissive, and she can be very condescending. And it was the very first time in all of my almost 35 years, I'll be 35 years old this year in June, you guys, that I literally, she literally said, I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense to me. And I literally blurted out, like, it's not for you to understand. And it almost shocked me a little bit, y'all, because I was like, oh shit, did I say that? And in that moment is when I realized, like, I've been searching for this woman's validation for so long. I didn't even realize that it was anything that I do until that came out of my mouth. And I realized, like, I'm grown as hell. Like, I'm closer to 40 than I've ever been, right? Like, why am I don't need your approval. It's one thing to offer advice or a suggestion to say, hey, I understand exactly where you're coming from, but you do have a large family. How is that going to work? Like, have you worked out the mechanics of that? That's fine. I'm not saying don't be a parent. I just feel like in a lot of, especially like minority communities, our parents don't know how to separate the fact that we're their adult children. They just see us as their children. And I really do feel like at a certain age and at certain junctures in your life, certain milestones, there needs to be like a renegotiation of that relationship with your parents. So I want to get into our healing and talking about our inner child, because it's a term that's thrown around a lot. And I feel like a lot of us, there's so many of us walking around that don't even realize how much our childhood has actually traumatized us. And a lot of us don't even realize that we have been through things. You know, like I've said in previous videos that we have been, when you've grown up in a traumatic situation, you literally think it's normal until you get around other people that have not gone through that, right? So let's start with our inner child. So this concept, you've probably heard floating around in self-help spaces, is not just a metaphor. It's the part of you that holds memories, beliefs, and emotions from your younger years. When we're children, we're impressionable, like the way we're treated, spoken to, and loved, or, in my case, not loved, becomes a blueprint for how we navigate life as adults. For example, if you were praised only when you achieved something, like in my case, like getting good grades or excelling in sports, you may have developed a belief that your worth is tied to performance. And y'all, I had this so bad. Like to the point where some of you guys know that I'm back in school and I had to release this want to have like a 4.0 GPA because I literally work for myself. So who cares? Who cares? If your emotional needs weren't met as a child, like myself, you may find yourself looking for that validation in adult relationships or are constantly trying to prove your value. This is something that I did a lot, to the point where like I said, friendships, relationships, I would try to become and be everything that I thought people wanted me to be. Like I recently just came to the realization that I can't love people into treating me nicely. I can't love people into loving me the way I'm supposed to be loved. If you genuinely care about me, that should just come. I shouldn't have to perform to receive it. Your inner child is always with you. It's the version of you that still craves safety, love, and acceptance. And when that child feels unseen or unloved, it can manifest as self-doubt, perfectionism, people-pleasing, and even an inability to trust others. Now, let's talk about why so many of us, even as grown adults, feel the need to prove ourselves to our parents. This one hits home, doesn't it? Maybe it's the job you chose, the partner you married, the way you live your life. You're still hoping to hear those magic words, "I'm proud of you." Believe me, I went through that. I literally just released that need a few months ago. Seriously. Now when people tell me, "Oh, I'm proud of you," it's something that I appreciate hearing, but I don't do the things that I do for that. Why does this happen though? It's because as kids, our parents are our first source of approval, right? Like I've said this in previous videos. If your parents don't give a damn about you, that literally is a threat to your survival as a child. They're the ones that teach us whether we're enough or if we have to earn love by meeting certain expectations. And even if our parents did have the best intentions, they might have just passed on their own unresolved wounds to us, which in my case is what I think happened. For example, if you had a parent that grew up in scarcity, they may push you towards a stable traditional career because they just didn't have the security. It's not about you, it's literally about their fears. But as children, we internalize these expectations as, if I don't meet their standards, I'm not good enough. Here's the kicker. Even when we recognize this logically, the emotional pull to win their approval can still linger. This is something that I've gone through where I still have to remind myself, hey, this is the them thing. This is not a you thing. This has nothing to do with you. It's like a program that runs in the background. It's like an app that you haven't closed all the way. And for many of us, this leads to a life built around external achievements instead of what truly makes us happy. So let me ask you this. What are you chasing? And is it for you or someone else? Because for myself, I've spoken about releasing the need, like releasing that care of what things look like to the outside, right? So I can remember like even just staying in relationships that weren't meant for me because I didn't want it to look like, oh, this relationship failed. Even recently, like I just left a almost 10-year relationship, and I remember speaking to my best friend about it, and I told her, like, I know that this isn't for me, but I feel bad. I feel like I'm wasting everyone's time because everybody's just so excited about this wedding, and they're so excited. I'm sorry, y'all, the neighbors. But yeah, like everybody was so excited about this proposal, and I've even found myself like when people come and get their hair done and they'll ask me like, oh, when's the wedding? And I find myself just like giving them the original date without like actually telling them like, hey, there is no wedding. Because there is a part that, you know, especially in society makes you feel like, especially as women, Black women at that, like, oh, when a relationship doesn't work out, you're the failure. Oh, you should have chose better. Instead of telling people, the individual that actually screwed the relationship up, they're like, hey, you should be a better person. So anyway, let's get to how we can heal our inner child. And this process is not about blaming your parents or living in the past. It's just about validating for yourself and acknowledging your experiences and giving yourself what you needed back then. This is something that I do a lot, whether it's, you know, one of my favorite designers when I was a kid, that's what you want to call her, was Lisa Frank. And so if I see a Lisa Frank coloring book, baby, I'm getting that coloring book, and I'm going to sit there and I'm going to be 6-year-old me for 30 minutes, and I'm going to be happy about it. My mom recently bought my baby an Easy Bake Oven. Y'all, that took me back. You know, like there's so many things that you can do that just, if it feels good in your body, I would say do it, right? So healing is a journey. It's not a destination. But here's a few steps that I've taken myself that can at least get you started. So first and foremost, reconnect with your inner child. There is a therapist a child PTSD therapist on YouTube. His name is Patrick Teahan, and I owe a lot of my inner child healing to him. He had a meditation where you sit down, you sit in a quiet place, and I can actually visualize this right now while I'm telling it to you guys, but you sit down in a quiet place and you are either at a park bench. For myself, I was sitting at a tree, and you picture little you, whatever that looks like to you. So for myself, I have a picture that I took not too long after my dad got custody of me for my 7th birthday. And I had this beautiful, big, puffy white dress on, and my hair was braided, and I had a bow in my hair, and I was hugging this teddy bear. And the crazy thing about that teddy bear is that is the teddy bear that the Department of Children and Family Services gave me while my parents were fighting back and forth in court, pretty much. And so every time, like for me, that picture, that little girl, that kind of simulates and symbolizes when I would say all of the trauma for me really started to like snowball. And so what you do is you picture little you, and you give little you, like, you allow yourself, younger you, to have consent, and you ask younger you, are you okay with certain things? So what he had you do is you meet yourself in the park, and you walk up to little you and you say, hey, little Tay, I'm Big Tay. I'm you from the future. I'm adult you. Do you mind if I have a seat next to you? And he'll tell you, if little you says no, that's okay. You come back to the meditation at another time. If little you says yes, then you sit down with little you. Now, what I personally did was I sat down with little me and I said, hey, I said, I'm so sorry that the people that were put in your life to protect you and take care of you didn't do a good job of that. I'm so sorry. You didn't deserve that. But I want you to know that big me, big us, we live completely different than that now. You don't have to worry about that. And it was like giving myself almost like an update, right? And this is not something that you just do one time. Recently, we went to a R&B festival, and it was like a 2000s R&B festival. So I dressed up, y'all, in my jeans skirt. I had my Air Forces on with like my scrunchy socks. I had a light up belt. I dressed like 17-year-old me would have. And in the moment, I didn't even realize, y'all, like what that did for my nervous system and how much that healed me. And then I'm there, and it was like, I used to always feel like I was like the ugly duckling in high school. So it was like funny because it was like, oh, I was able to go and I had like a boyfriend and I could put his name in my bamboo earrings, and people told me how cute I looked. And these were all of the things that I didn't hear and weren't able to do when I was younger. And I remember when I got home, I think I slept on it and I woke up and I told my best friend, I said, you know, it's crazy. Like, I feel like I did something for 17-year-old me. Like she just always felt so unseen, and not unseen in a way of like, hey, y'all, look at me, but more so like I used to just feel invisible. I felt like nobody even cared whether I was here or gone, right? So reconnecting with your inner child looks like taking the time to visualize or connect with the younger version of you. What did you look like? How did you feel? What were you missing? Journaling is very helpful with this. I do a lot of voice notes, or, you know, like I do, you know, my speaking. So I use my YouTube channel for these kind of things, and that's helped. One of the things that I've also done too, and I do this every time a relationship ends, a friendship ends, what have you, is I will journal, but in that journaling, I write a letter to myself. I apologize to myself for the things that I may have allowed when I didn't know any better, and how I'm going to do better with myself now that I do know. And when you're writing this letter to your younger self, make sure that you let your younger self know that we are now safe. There was never anything wrong with you. And I love us just the way that we are. That's really, really, really important. Number 2 is practicing self-compassion. Be kind to yourself. This is something, y'all, it took me so long to work on. But be kind to yourself. You've literally been living in prove mode for years. And it's okay. You were doing the best with what you knew. You were doing what you needed to do to keep yourself safe, to keep yourself fed. You were in survival mode, pretty much. This is not something that you're going to get over or unlearn overnight. Like, allow yourself grace, because there's going to be a lot of old patterns that you're going to have to unlearn. And at the same time, you're going to have to learn how to replace those things with self-love. And a lot of us, self-love is an exercised muscle for us. We didn't know how to do that because every time we chose ourselves, we were mistreated, or we were told, we were treated as if we had like audacity for genuinely just wanting to be loved, or I know for myself, it was like every time I thought I had a good idea, or every time I dressed a certain way, or every time I did a thing, whatever that was, it could make me happy. But there were adults around me that would make me question myself, or they would make me feel absolutely ridiculous. And it took me a long time to just say, okay, so if I go and do this and people don't like it, so the fuck what? I don't want my life to end tomorrow. And my entire life has been me worrying about what other people feel like when it comes to me. And that's something that I really had to learn. Another thing is learning to set boundaries with your parents. And this is going to be hard for a lot of us because we've been literally like mentally conditioned to do what they want us to do, right? If your parents' opinions still weigh heavily on you, you definitely need to start creating healthy boundaries. And you need to not worry about how they feel about it. I want you to really think about the fact that they've kept you in like a mental prison for your entire life. They can stand to be mad, or they can stand to throw a fit, or whatever it is, and it's not your problem, and you're not responsible. These are grown-ass people, and they've been grown longer than you have. If they got a problem with it, they need to go see the lady. But baby, your boundaries are not negotiable. We're not negotiating them. There is no, well, what if no, absolutely not. And that doesn't mean that you have to cut them off. Now, if that's what's best for you and your nervous system, then baby, you do what you need to do. But it does mean that you decide how much influence their opinions are going to have on your life, if at all. And remember, you are not obligated to meet their expectations if it compromises your happiness. Period, point blank. Number 4, redefine success on your terms. Ask yourself, what does success mean to me? Not my parents, not my peers, not society, not no damn man, whoever, no woman, whatever, but to me. It could be having time to travel, nurturing meaningful relationships, pursuing a passion project. Whatever it is, make sure it aligns with you and you only, not somebody else and their values. And 5, seek support. This journey is not going to be easy. You're not going to always be able to do it yourself. And you don't want to, unless your friends have created a safe space for you to, you don't want to constantly have to lean on them because you'll just feel like a burden. Even if they tell you that you're not being one, it just comes from, what we've gone through. But seek support. Sometimes healing requires help from a therapist or a counselor who can guide you through this journey. Y'all know what I say all the time. And ain't nothing wrong with going to see the lady. Everybody needs to go see the lady, okay? At some point. There is nothing wrong with that. And sometimes you need somebody from the outside looking in to really help you because you've been navigating this entire thing by yourself. You are not alone. You don't have to do this alone. Understand that. You're not. And I know sometimes it's scary to step off and say, well, damn, I've been looking for my parents' approval for so long. What do I do now? And it's just, you're going to create a new relationship with yourself. And it is going to be a little scary and you're going to be apprehensive at first. But once you really get the ball rolling, you're going to be like, oh my God, this wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. Like y'all, when I really started setting boundaries, I was throwing them shits out like Pokeballs. And the funny thing is I would say something or I would say, like, one of the things that I had bad was I had this need to explain myself. I wanted people to understand where I was coming from. Right. And it's because whenever I made a decision that my mother didn't agree with, she made me, or she would question me in a way that made me felt like I had to explain myself to her. Right. So when I just started to get to a point where my literal response would be because I don't want to, and that was a complete sentence, y'all, I felt like a bad bitch. You couldn't tell me shit. I was like, ooh, girl, what took us so long to do this? So the last thing I want to leave you guys with is let go of that need to prove yourself. This is going to be the hardest part, like I said, but it's going to be the most freeing. And what I want you to start doing, because I had to do this myself, is when you start to have those feelings, ask yourself, what am I trying to prove, and to who, and for what? And then remind yourself that you are enough, just as you are. You don't have to achieve, perform, or be perfect to earn love. You don't have to earn the right to be loved, baby. That's God. When God puts you on this planet, that's a birthright for you. And if you are around people that make you feel like you have to be something to receive love, baby, those are not your people. And that is something that I had to learn myself, because the minute that you don't serve certain people or you don't benefit certain people, they pull that love away. You deserve pure, unadulterated, unconditional love. That is all I have for you all today. I pray that this message reaches you and touches you in the heart space where it needed to. And if this was helpful for you, or you feel like you want to tell me your story, my platform is always open. I would so love to hear from you. I pray that you all have an amazing day, and I will talk to you guys later.